tonight is we are talking about managing thinking, after detox your thinking, and it's really intentional that we are starting January Tripart Care Hub, which is the first one for the year. Thinking about our thinking, because the reality is that after I've been a psychiatrist for so long, 26 years this year, I've come to know that one thing that's very common to we never think about what we are thinking. It's just not the way we live life, just except we are very intentional. Most of us live life without thinking about what we are thinking. Yet, this is the interesting bit that our thoughts actually run our lives. I know there are people here who are people of faith, who are believers, who are Christians, and we know that that aligns perfectly with scriptures. That life goes in the direction of our thoughts. Sometimes I marvel when I see people setting goals, but they are not upgrading the mass and they are thinking to match those goals. The reality is that it will happen. If our thinking does not align with the goals we are setting, the goals will remain perpetually on paper because our lives go in the direction of our thinking. Um, so I think that a good way to start this, it's really important that we start this evening thinking about our goals, about really about our thinking. So that's what January this evening is about. And I'm just going to play the introductory video. I'm going to change slides, play the introductory video, and then we'll be back. And for those who are just joining us, it's Tripart Care Emotional Wellbeing Hub, and this is the January edition. And I'm delighted, your host for tonight, and co-hosting with me, Buyukumi and Ebon, who are also members of the team. So we're going to play this.
We welcome you all to this month's Tripart Care Emotional Wellbeing Hub. In February 2021, Dr. T. Ayodele Ajayi founded Tripart Care, an online emotional well-being hub born out of the need that emerged during the COVID-19 lockdown. Motivated by real-life experiences in our communities, a recognition of a safe space where mental health could be discussed in a needs-led fashion emerged. After over 20 years of public mental health education to Black church communities, Tripart Care was launched to address the unique challenges that the intersection of faith, culture, and mental health presents. Through our events, book clubs, liaisons with churches and leaders, and our WhatsApp groups, we work in bridging the gap between cultural sensitivity, spiritual care, and mental health. Since its inception, Tripart Care has hosted over 50 online workshops, created safe spaces for open conversations on mental health, and partnered with churches to provide training and support. Through Tripart Care workshops, mentorships, consultancy, and a YouTube channel, Dr. Ajayi, who is a consultant psychiatrist and a fellow of UK Royal College of Psychiatrists, along with his team, continues to champion one vision, a community where mental health and spiritual well-being go hand in hand. Provides safe spaces for candid conversations, offer one-to-one support and signposting and training to churches and leaders. By making mental health education accessible and relevant and relatable, we aim to build communities that prioritize mental health, are resilient, and are whole in spirit, soul, and body. Please join us as we enjoy today's Tripart Care Hub.
So that's really what that gives a very nice introduction and a succinct introduction of what Tripart Care is about. And I'm going to go back to my slides and we can get the show running. Right. Okay. Just, I'm going to be your host for tonight. As I said, my name is Dr. T. Ayodele Ajayi. I'm a consultant psychiatrist in the NHS and also an expert witness, psychiatric witness with the courts. And that's just a bit about my profile, which is there. I'm just not going to go into all of that, but those are part of the roles that I play in the community. Uh, and also, very importantly, Tripart Care is a team of very eminent and very motivated professionals. We've got other psychiatrists. We've got well-being psychological web practitioners. We've got pharmacists. We've got medical students. So we are quite a good bunch. And by the way, if you are a person who shares our values, we're very publicly a Christian organization. We are interested in mental health. And if those are things that you share passion on, or you're a mental professional and you want to join us, we are currently recruiting for volunteers. Please feel free. So this is a public mental health education event. So it's not a personal consultation by any means. If anyone needs to have a personal consultation, it's best that they consult with their primary mental provider. That could be their general practitioner over here in the UK, or the family physician in the United States or Canada, or in other countries, whoever it is that takes a lead. And that could be your psychiatric nurse, your psychiatrist, your psychotherapist, or even your counselor. But it's important that you consult with whoever is taking a lead on that care to make sure that they are involved in whatever decision made. Right. So, and just say that tonight's meeting is being recorded, and that's going to then be uploaded. When it's been edited, we usually edit out any confidential information so that this space remains a confidential and a particularly safe space. And thereafter, then upload that content onto our YouTube channel. And one of my co-hosts will be featuring the YouTube channel. One of the ways to make sure that you don't miss out on the content that is going to be uploaded is to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And in that case, then you can be sure you don't miss out on anything. So just a few housekeeping rules. Sometimes in all these meetings, we might discuss things that can be triggering. Things can bring back difficult memories or difficult emotions. If that happens, please by all means seek out for help. Please do send a personal message to either myself or any of the co-hosts so that we can support you. This is all about a supportive community, and we wouldn't want anyone to feel that anything that's been done has traumatized them or re-traumatized them. So if there's any such thing, please do reach out for support so we can support. And as I said earlier, you can keep your cameras on or off as you prefer. And if you want to remain anonymous, please by all means use a pseudonym so you are not identifiable. And like I said earlier as well, it's a confidential space, and we try to keep things as confidential as possible. So whatever happens here stays here, particularly because sometimes people share their personal stories. What we do with the personal stories is that we edit them out of the video before it goes on into the public domain, so that people's personal stories remain personal to them and they can feel safe. And please feel free to comment as we go on. At the end of the event, I will respond to questions, and usually my co-hosts are very helpful in making sure that I don't miss anything out. And also to say that we've got a Tripart Care. Not only do we have a YouTube channel, we also now have an Instagram page that is ably managed by one of our team members, Covenant, who did a brilliant job. And we are looking forward to really upping our game in 2026. We're expecting more videos, more short videos, more short clips. Lots of things are on the pipeline. So please continue to support us. And importantly, please continue to pray for us as well. And at the end of the session, we will do a Q&A. question and answer. Right. So tonight, as in every other hub we've had, I always encourage everyone who is coming to spend the 2 hours wisely in terms of to remain in a reflective mood as we continue. To think about the new knowledge you're acquiring. What's new here? Why should I use the new knowledge I'm acquiring? How can I apply it to my life immediately and promptly? Because we do know that there is neuroscience supports the fact that the quicker we apply new knowledge, the more likely we are going to keep them in our memory, the more likely they are going to be entrenched as a working memory, and the more likely that they are going to be of use to us in our lives, and they are going to lead to hard life changes. So, but the other question to ask is, when will I start using this new knowledge? Who can help me to implement this in my life? And not only just somebody who can help me, who can also hinder me, because many times we think about who is going to be my supporter. But also, sometimes we need to guard that new knowledge. We need to make sure that we're also protecting that new habit or new action such that it doesn't get jeopardized or waylaid by the people that we associate with. And the next important step, I think it's actually the most important one, is what is the next simplest single step that I'm going to take this evening, or it could be tomorrow morning, to really, it's almost like I'm investing, I'm laying a claim to the fact that this is a period of change, and this is my first investment. It's almost like a down payment. You know, when you get a mortgage, you need to make a down payment. It's almost like that's your commitment that I'm in the business for the long haul. I really mean this. I really mean I'm interested in this property and I want to live there. So in the same way, this new knowledge, what's the next simplest step that you're going to take to show your commitment to continue to on the journey of change? And the YouTube channel has been posted by Purikumi. So please feel free to subscribe to that and just to subscribe to that. So in terms of how to also continue to help ourselves to bring change, because really tonight particularly, I'm really interested in change of thinking. It's about thinking differently. It's about changing our mindset, and that's possible. That's the good thing. Not only does science support that, scripture also supports that. Both scripture and science align with the fact that we can change our thinking patterns. So how can we translate, those action points that we showed in the last slide? How can we translate them to reality? There's something called the law of diminishing return, or the law of diminishing intent, not the law of diminishing return. The law of diminishing intent states that the longer we wait to act on something we know we need to act on, the less likely we're ever going to act on them. So the point is that the quicker we take action, the more likely that those actions are going to result in lasting change. So my challenge is, let's take action quickly. The next challenge is to write things down, because this is the reality. Neuroscience tells us that about 50% of what I'm telling you now, within the next hour, if you don't write anything down, within the next hour or two, 50% of them will be lost to memory. And that about 70% of them within the next day will be lost to memory if they are not captured on paper. And that by a week, really 90% of them will be lost if they are not captured on paper. And I keep saying if they are not captured on paper, because when we capture things on paper, we give them longevity. It's almost like those pieces of knowledge they develop a life of their own. And this is all neuroscience, actually. And the other thing is that we also do know that one of the ways to keep memory and to really entrench knowledge into lasting change is to teach them to others or share that information with somebody else. In the process of sharing, you get more clarity yourself, but not only so, you also get support to continue to keep going. And that brings me to the next point, not just sharing, but getting support. And that's the same information that's been replicated on the second side of the slide in terms of archiving, taking quick action, getting an accountability partner, which is the person you share that information with or get support from, And of course, thirdly, also assessing periodically as you go on day one, day five, day 7, 1 week, 1 month, 2 weeks. How are you making progress? Because what Peter Drucker, very noble and very well known, impactful management consultant, said that what is not measured cannot be changed. And what is not monitored, we cannot, what we don't measure, we can change. Um, so that's really important. So what I intend to cover tonight? We intend to cover the origin. Where does our thinking come from? What are the layers of thinking? Like I said earlier, we think without thinking. And the reality is that there's something in neuroscience called metacognition. Metacognition is the process of paying attention to our thinking about what we are thinking. And I usually joke, I say that many times when I ask people, what do you have for breakfast yesterday or today or this morning? You won't struggle to bring that up. Usually you shouldn't struggle to bring up what you had for breakfast. But when I ask you, what were you thinking of when you were commuting to work today, or when you were on the train to work, or you were driving to work, or driving back from work, then that becomes an issue because we think without thinking. We just most of us are free floating thinkers. We don't have any reins over our thinking and so what we are actually thinking about. Most of us are more concerned about what's on our physical plate than on our plate. The reality is that it's what's on our mental plate that actually drives everything, including on our physical plates. So toxic thinking patterns, are there patterns that we can look at and what can we do about them? We're going to look at self-limiting beliefs as well. We're going to look at toxic thinking patterns. What can you do? Because the reality is that, to be honest, the only reason why this will enter into the agenda in the first instance is that we can change our thinking patterns. And we are not stuck with our thinking patterns. If a thinking pattern is not serving us, there are things we can do, both extracting knowledge from science that is actually founded in scriptures that can help us to change the way we think and to really adopt new thinking styles. And I always say that this is not something I read in a book. This is something I've practiced in my life. I know 100%, 150% that it works. I know without a shadow of doubt it works. It worked in my life, and I've seen it work in the people who take it seriously enough to make it to practice it. So really, that's the point that these things work, and I'm hoping that they would work for us as well. So, and then at the end of the day, I will share what I call the 7-hour detox method. It's very easy. I like to talk in alliterations because it's easy for people to then we will then talk about. I'm going to show another video, and I think this could be one of the most. It's a short video, 2-minute video, but it could be one of the most profound things we are going to pick up tonight. So I really encourage you to please pay attention. And then when we've showed the video, I'll also then ask for your thoughts. Not just for people to type in what strikes them. Just think about what's the most striking message to you in that video. And I'm also going to ask as well that, and we, all right, that's rolling. Okay, I'll just restart that. I'll stop sharing and then go back for it again. Okay, so share. It's interesting, it's not playing. Quite interesting. We just tested it now, but never mind. We'll come back to that, I'm sure. Oh, we will go back to that at some point. Please do remind me. We'll try that again at the end of the meeting, because I think it's a very short video, but it speaks volumes really, and that's why I think it'd be good to have it shown. Right. So I want to share two quick personal stories, just to tell you about how powerful our thinking can be. And not only just how powerful our thinking can be, it's also about how dysfunctional thoughts can really run our lives, and if we let them. So, I think this was 1998. I remember it very clearly, like it was yesterday, 1998 Christmas, or let me share another one actually. Um, I, when I finished medical school, I went to a particular medical school, and on completing my medical school, as it was in those days, things have changed a lot now. But where I trained in Nigeria in those days, usually when you go to medical school, and there is no problem with you in terms of you didn't really do anything outrageous during your medical career, and they don't think you are going to be a bad doctor. What they tend to do is that the university will keep you at least for your first year. They will give you what's called an housemanship, which is called, we now call it the foundation year in this country. So that's usually the norm. Everybody applies to the university you finished from, and it's almost like automatically you get the job. And here was I. I remember it like it was yesterday. I applied like every one of my colleagues did, and guess what? I didn't get the job. And I hadn't even started my career, and this was the narrative that was playing in my head. What on earth just happened? For some reason, I believed that my medical career was over, because who would want me when the people who even trained me will not offer me a job? I mean, how do you account for that? Even the people who invested into me, who thought, okay, yes, we are the one who are training you as a doctor to become a doctor. Now you've become a doctor, they are not even going to offer me a job. And that narrative, it was very crippling. I just thought, oh, where am I going to get a job? Where am I going to get a job? Where am I going to get a job? And it almost shaped the way I thought of myself as a doctor without even having started my career. Needless to say that within a month or two of that experience, if actually less than 2 months after that experience, I did get a job. On the first day of starting the job, a family came, a nice family, middle-aged couple came into the clinic. Now, I remember it was my first day, and they came with their children. They came with two children. They came with a son and a daughter, a very beautiful daughter. And it turned out that we saw them, consulted with them, and they went their way. Somehow, one way or the other, our paths crossed again. And it's now 26 years. I've been married to that daughter, and happily at that. And this was myself who at the time was saying, oh, my career is over. I wasn't given a job in the place where I was trained. That means that it cannot be a good start. It's just to let us know how sometimes the narratives and the stories we tell ourselves and that we run our lives by are very inaccurate and very untrue. They are opinions and they are not facts. The next one has to do with stepping into the consultant role. For many, many years after I'd been qualified to really go on and take on the consultant role, I was on the sidelines. And this was because somehow I'd encountered consultant psychiatrists that I felt the message they were giving me was that this life is not the one you want to live. It's tough, it's challenging. And as a result of that, I sort of imbibed that. And so I sat on the sidelines for a long, long time. And then one day I was in coaching with a very, very talented medical mentor. And she just told me, she said, I sense a self-limiting belief in your story, because there's no reason why you shouldn't be going on to become a consultant. There's no justifiable reason. And she said, there is a self-limiting belief there. And for the first time, I acknowledged that because she named the elephant in the room. It had been there, but I didn't acknowledge it. And that changed the trajectory. Because from then on, I actually realized that actually I believed a lie all this while. And of course, that changed the course of my career completely. And years on, I then took the plunge, became a consultant, and all the beautiful things that have happened since then happened. Just to also say that sometimes we believe lies that hold us back. That brings me to my next point. The whole essence of today is to get back into the driver's seat and put on our seatbelts and something them ready for the ride, like this gentleman is doing. Because for some of us, the reality is that we may not realize it, but in the real sense of it, we are no longer in the driver's seat when it comes to thinking about how we think, or when it comes to how we manage our thinking. So I'm hoping that tonight it will be a time to get back into the driver's seat and really fasten the seat belts and just do what we need to do. But let's do this. How many images can people see? And the whole essence of this slide is to show us that our thinking can tell us lies, and that what we believe to be true, the way we think, sometimes our opinions are not facts. And when we continue to believe, particularly if it's a negative opinion, either about ourselves, about the world, about others, when those toxic thinking patterns are not challenged, they hold us back from being the best version of ourselves. As I said, I'm a person of faith, I'm a Christian, and I believe that every one of us have something that we're here to do. And when we have beliefs that are not in keeping with who we really are, those beliefs hold us back from really in the best version, from living the script to the full. So let's just, how many faces or human beings can we count on this slide? And I want people to, you don't need to unmute yourself, but please just write the numbers down. Write the numbers in the chat. It's just to really drum home this message about the fact that sometimes, so let's count and start writing in the chat, please. Okay, somebody says 3. Okay, thank you for that attempt. At least 5. Okay, thank you. Somebody says 6. Okay, any other takers? 7. Okay, it's mounting. 6. Okay. Okay, 10 from my hobby. I like that. The joint effort. Somebody says 9. All right, okay. Okay, solution I can see, and I'll come back to you in a minute.
I think 7.
Okay, 7. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. 8. Okay. Thank you. Keep them coming. Right. Now let's count together. I think I counted 10. But can anyone see this gentleman in this corner? This elderly man who is like in his pajamas? Can anyone see this soldier? That's 2.
Yeah.
Can anyone see another soldier?
Yeah.
That this is so 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
There's a head here making 4.
Oh.
There's a ballerina here making 5. Another ballerina here making 6. There is somebody here. You see that? And then there is a little face there.
Oh no, I didn't see that.
Yeah, there's a face there. Now there's somebody here in the corner, and there's another person there. When I counted, I think I counted 10. And the essence of this is that many times our thoughts also run on inaccurate information. We don't get the full picture. You enter a room, and these are things that happen in real life and ruin relations. You enter into a room, somebody doesn't say hello because maybe they've had a hard day, or they are looking through you, but really, even though they are right there in the room, they are thousands of miles away. Maybe they're in America. Maybe they're replaying a message or that they had over dinner with their spouses last night. Or maybe they are thinking about their son whom they need to send money to. Or maybe they are thinking about, they are really in the room, but they are only physically there. Their mind and their presence is somewhere else. So even though they cannot see you, And then the brain, neuroscience tells us that the brain likes stories. From that event, there are 1,001 stories that could emerge. And it's the quality of the story then determine the quality of our emotions, and the quality of our emotions will determine the quality of our behavior. Yet, if we change that narrative and that story, if we change really true regarding that story, then the outcomes are different. And it happens all the time. Every time we encounter an event, it's not the event that determines our outcomes. It's the story that our brain tells us. It's the narrative that we attach to the event that determines our emotions, and that emotion determines our behavior, and it's a revolving cycle. The behavior in turn will then determine more emotions. The emotions intensify, and so does the action, and so the thinking. And over time, as we continue to do it over and over again, it becomes deeply entrenched. It becomes deeply entrenched to the point in which we no longer believe it. We no longer believe that there's an alternative story or there's an alternative narrative to that event. And that's that when cognitive behavioral therapists tell us that's what they teach us. They teach us to identify, to link the thoughts to the emotions, and the emotions to the behavior, and to break that cycle if it's is a dysfunctional one. So the whole essence of, so anytime you confront an event, remember that event is a neutral event. It's the story line and the narrative that you attach to it that will then determine your emotion, and that will determine your behavior. And the other thing about that is your thinking, the storyline you attach to it does not just come out of nowhere. Most of the storyline comes from past experiences that we've had, a lot of them that are deep entrenched in our childhood. I think that what I've just said now in the last 2 minutes will probably be the strongest, the foundation of what we are talking about tonight. And just getting, when I got a hang of it, my life took a different direction completely. And it started going more north than I went. And I would recommend it all the time because I know it to be true. Just getting a hold of that, applying it in your life would, and that brings me to my next point. How long do we think it takes to form or break a habit? Let's look at the chart, please. Do you think it takes to form or break a habit? Let's see. Okay, how long does it take to? Okay, 90 days. Okay, 21 days, 20 days. Thank you. I like all those 90. Okay. Oh, Lua, that's our younger daughter. She says 90 days. Thank you for joining us, Lua. Okay. Michelle Roche says 21 days. Brother Nat says 30 days, 21 days. Okay, Michael. Oh, Michael, thank you for joining us. Michael is my colleague at work. He's a GP resident. 72 days. Right, good. I'm happy that there are some scientists in the house, Michael being one of them. 120 days. Right, okay. Right. Now, the reality is this. There is only one piece of research that I'm currently aware of that is valid and that is replicable and that carries weight in terms of how long it takes to make or break a habit. And guess what? They didn't put one single figure to it. What they say is that it takes on the average between 18 days and 254 days. 18 days and 254 days to form a habit. They concluded that on average is about 66 days. That's different from usually what people throw around, that it's 18 days, it's 21 days. They actually say that the length of time that it takes to form a habit varies depending on the complexity of the habit to be formed, on the amount of effort you are putting in, and on the support that you get. So when people say, oh, it's been 21 days since I've been trying to think in a particular way and I can't do it, it must be that this is the way I'm wired. It's not true. It's just that the complexity of the change is what determines how long it could take to actually effect that change. And so when people do their 21 days or they do their 7 days and nothing changes, they think it's not changing. But the reality of what's happening in our brain when we are thinking differently, when we are acting differently, is that we are literally building new pathways. We are building new railroads in our brains. We are building new routes of transporting information. And like I said, the length of time it takes to build those routes depends on the complexity and the effort. So somebody who wants to develop an exercise regime, who goes to the gym once a week, probably that habit might not be deeply entrenched as much as somebody who without fail goes to the gym twice a week. And that's why after doing that for a while, the only way that it has worked for me is to have a treadmill in my living room so that when I wake up first thing in the morning, I can see the treadmill and it reminds me that Ayodele, you've got to exercise today. It took a long, long while to arrive at that decision, but thankfully we are there now and it's going to plan. What I'm trying to say is that it's the amount of effort that we put in that actually determines the change. Having said that, there are still days when I still miss it, but it's more likely than not now that I exercise enough to feel, oh yes, I should. I'm on the exercise front. I'm ready to face the day. Oh, somebody's cooking beans. Are we invited? Somebody's having beans for dinner. Um, I wouldn't mind as long as we're invited. Right. Okay. So now let's get the nitty-gritty of it. Let's begin to dissect thinking. We said we are to think about thinking today. So let's begin to dissect thinking. Complexity, amount of effort, and intensity. Complexity, amount of effort. The complexity. Somebody's asking, what are the complexity of the heart, the amount of effort and support you get. The support you get. And that support could be, for instance, buying a treadmill and putting it in your room. So there's also accessibility. When you make it easy and remove the hindrances that lead to from that habit, you are more likely to entrench the habit than if you don't. So science of thought thinking. The first thing is that we think on 3 levels. Generally, overall, people agree, and that 99% of our thinking is at a subconscious level. That is, 99% of our thinking goes on cop, goes noticed, goes unrecorded, and goes on captured. I was speaking to a dear mentee yesterday, and I was saying to him, I said, I've got on my phone a note app, and that I carry it around because I carry my phone around frequently. And the note app is to record my thinking, because sometimes I get some very creative thoughts that if I don't capture them on the phone right then, they just go. They just sublime. They disappear. They come and they go. That's good if they are good thoughts because you can capture them. But the problem is that if they are negative thoughts, they also go like that. They also go unnoticed, but it doesn't mean that they're wreaking havoc. And that's the challenge. So we think on 3 levels, which I'm going to come to, but 10%, let's see how we are doing for time, actually. But 99% of our thinking is on a subconscious level. It's on a subconscious level. And so there are what we call core beliefs. Our core beliefs are really deeply ingrained, deeply established of who we think we are, how we think the world is, and how we think others are. There are people who believe that there is nobody who can be kind. That there are people who deeply believe that anyone who is being kind to you have an agenda. There's an hidden agenda, and it's only a matter of time before they reveal it. Can you imagine how the people are going to function in loving relationships, in spousal relationships, in at work? Always, and it's not because it's not their fault. It's because something is happening in the person making them like that. There are people who believe that they are unlovable. There are people who believe that anything is going to go wrong, it happens to them, or that when anything is going right, when it's their turn, it escapes. Those are deeply in and deeply held and tenaciously held thinking patterns about self, others, and the world. Challenge is that they tend to be self-fulfilling because thoughts lead the direction of our lives. So core beliefs, automatic thoughts they're just like the ones I was talking about. They are like slow running streams. It's the way to think about it is if you work in an office that is looking a road. I work, even though my office does not overlook the major road, but it overlooks the major road. The reality is that there's traffic always passing, and those traffic make noise. But when you are in the flow and you're in the zone, you are so deeply engrossed in the work that you are doing that you don't hear the noise of coming and towing and froing of traffic. However, if you get distracted in a reason, you suddenly become more conscious of the running traffic. And that's how automatic thoughts are. They're always running in the background anyway. And then when something happens and it piques our interest, we might pick up on be negative, they might be neutral, or they might be positive. But every single moment of our waking life, our thinking is going on. And the challenge for us is to be aware of them and to be conscious enough to catch what's positive, put them to report them and keep them away, and to challenge the negative ones and not allow them to ruin the show or to run our lives. And of course, so we've talked about core beliefs, the tenuous beliefs that we hold about ourselves, others, and the world. We've talked about big thoughts that are just like they are thoughts that run all through our waking moments. They can be neutral, they can be negative, positive, and then there's the most superficial one, which is our conscious thoughts. We decided to attend Tripart care tonight. Those conscious things that we are conscious about. And the other thing to note is that thoughts are structural, that they occupy real estate in our brains. Our thinking can change the structure of our brains. People don't know that. Our thinking can change the architecture of our brain. It actually does, actually. When we think the particular thoughts for long enough, build new pathways, they become our new realities. And the other thing is also that the generational impact of that. The generational impact of that is that happens, there's actually something that changes in the genetic level, which means that we are passing on things to the next generation. And I think that those are, when I think about, those are the things that really make me passionate about some of these thoughts that I share. It's not just about us, it's also about the coming generation. It's about what we are passing on to people who are coming. Epigenetic really about being, it's about our action, overwriting the gene by the actions that we take. And I thinking pattern is one of those. So we talked about that already. Just thought around life, and they often run without really us being aware of them, and being able to identify them can be victory. Core belief. It's some people believe that. I know some people believe that psychiatrists and people, I hope there are not people, none of us who are thinking you're just trying to brainwash us. I hear that sometimes. Or they say, oh, therapists are only interested in washing people. Therapists are only interested in brainwashing people. Or therapists are only interested or psychiatrists are interested in loading people up with medicine and making them like, that's not true. But those thoughts can actually then determine how people respond. There are men, I come across men who believe that, not a lot of them, but that women don't have to have money or men can't be trusted. Those are core beliefs, and they run, or that the world is a place. So how do you there are two main, if I were to think about toxic types of thinking, there are two of them mainly. One of them is cognitive distortions or thinking traps, and they are basically they are the automatic negative patterns. You know, those automatic thoughts when they are habitually negative and they distort reality. They affect with the reality, like looking at the world through tinted glass. So it's the tint on the glass that is making everything look the color of the tint. But the person who is looking through the tinted glass does not realize it. When you put on sunglasses, everything looks dark. But in actual sense, when you take off your glasses, you actually find out that there's light. And sometimes that's the easiest way to describe cognitive distortions. Um, or, and there are several of them, basically, and they can be associated with the onset of depression, anxiety, and some mental conditions. So that's the link to mental health, actually. Um, and they can make things more scary, more intense, bigger. They can make a mountain out of a molehill, so to say. Um, and over time, one can has developed those patterns over time. It can be difficult to recognize them, such that even when other people try to point it out to us, we are hostile to them because we think they are wrong, we are right, because and it's because of the lens through which we are looking. So the easiest way to handle them is to catch them early, identify the triggers or the red flag words. Because, like I said, they've been deeply entrenched that sometimes we don't recognize them. When we're thinking always or never, when we're thinking everyone or no one, everyone always treats me in a particular way. No one likes me. Nothing ever works out. Every forever. When you start when you find that those are recurring themes in the way you see yourself, the world, and others, there are red flags that there might be some cognitive distortions taking place there. Just like I didn't realize it about my career until my coach called it out. And I'm ever grateful to her. It's been years now. I still remain in touch with her, and I still send her messages and say thank you, because she was bold enough to call out my dysfunctional thinking, and I think God used that to save my career. And I think that's the flip side of this, to help the people in our life to call out their dysfunctional thinking in a loving way, because we may just be saving them. We may be saving their marriages, saving their careers, saving their lives, saving parenting, saving, or who knows, saving their ministries. So that you can also deal with dysfunctional thinking is to journal, because when you journal, you begin to see patterns. Journaling, when you record your thoughts over time, you can then join the dots together, and it becomes apparent because the dots were all over the place before. The journal then helps you to join them. And the other thing is also to share. Sometimes when you share those thinking with other people who are rational, important people in your life, they help you to be able to challenge them. And the other one is to seek help. There's no, I shared how a very perceptive coach, was helpful in helping me to recognize my own dysfunctional thinking, and actually how liberating that experience was. Sometimes, particularly when it comes to people of faith, sometimes we shy away from coaching, from therapy. And there are a number of apps around now. I'm going to share some of them at the end of the meeting, in terms of apps that people also use to monitor mood, but also to monitor to help dysfunctional thinking. So these are the types of dysfunctional thinking. There are different ones. People talk about 16, people talk about 12, but I just they're all or nothing thinking, assuming one failure or mistake is the end of thing. You know, when they didn't give me my first job interview, I thought my career was over before I even started. Can you imagine? That's not rational. It doesn't fit into any, but because it was a very of life, I'd just become a doctor after 8 years of being in medical school, and I thought, oh wow, after all these years, let's just get into the job. And then I get that disappointment. So it hit me more than it should. And I remember, thank God, I remember one of my friends said at the time, he said, look, how can you think your career is over without even starting yet? He said, the best is yet to come. There's something better. He was right. I was wrong. So that's all or nothing thinking. When just that failure, usually a failure, we think is the end of the career. We think is the end of end of all things. I, I've got a number of them to share, but let's that story for another day. Catastrophizing is imagining the worst case scenario, even when it's unlikely and when there is no evidence to back it up. Mind reading is about, and this happens a lot in friendships, it happens in spousal relationships. When we think we know what the other person is thinking, and we begin to act based on that, it's almost like I know what I'm thinking. Really, in the real sense of it, none of us can beat our chest and say 100% that I know what the other person is thinking, except they tell us. But sometimes we think, oh, I know what she's thinking. I know what she's thinking. I know what my boss is thinking about me. It's not always true. And we need to give those benefits of the doubt because otherwise they then run the show. Labeling, using one particular negative event to then use to label ourselves. I forgot to call them, then I call them back, then I'm a negative friend. I'm a terrible friend. That was that I used to be like that. I used to just tear myself apart for little things like that. But that's a past life. So personalization is about thinking everything is about us. The reason why my team lost the match was because I didn't score that goal. How about the other players on the pitch that didn't score the goal? There are 11 players on the pitch. It would take the 11 have done something or not done something for the team to lose. So for you to take that responsibility, it's personalized. It usually when you see people who have a lot of self-blame, uh, that's personalization a lot has a lot to do with that. So these are toxic thinking patterns. The other type of negative or from the toxic, apart from cognitive distortions or thinking traps, are what we call self-limiting beliefs. And that's the one that my called out when she said, well, I can sense some limiting beliefs here. And the self-limiting belief was that I just didn't think that I would ever become a consultant that was going to be effective and not be stressed all the time. And that couldn't be far from the truth. So negative self-limiting beliefs, they are really, okay, right. So self-limiting beliefs are they're also thoughts about ourselves, about others, about the world, but they are limiting. They prevent us from doing something that we are actually capable of doing. So they prevent people from applying for self-limiting beliefs about and how this holds us back from really being the best version that God wants us to be. And they are usually feelings and thoughts that are true, but they are taken as facts. We absolutely believe them. We run the script of our lives by them, but they're actually opinions, and they are not opinions. And they ruin careers, they ruin relationships, they ruin spousal relationships, they ruin ministries, they ruin. Sometimes they put people back from really going all the way out and living life the way they should. They prevent us from conquering the territories that are already attached to our names. And all the beliefs. One is to recognize the source of the narrative. Sometimes it's been an abusive teacher. Sometimes it's an abusive spouse. Sometimes it's something that happened to an abusive parent, or sometimes it's even bullying from childhood. There's usually something that's happened that prevents that causes the self-limiting belief. But the good thing is this, and that's the reason why we will be talking about this, with our self-limiting beliefs, and we don't have to live with them. They are not irreparable, and they are not changing. And I think that's the reason why we'll be spending 2 hours talking about toxic thinking, because we don't need to be stuck with them. There is a way out. We can change them. And these are the things to do. Want to recognize the source of the story. Where does this narrative come from? I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, nothing that I do ever. Where does that narrative come from? That's first. And who or what gives the story its power? There is somebody in the past, or there's an experience in the past that is empowering that story, that's and driving that narrative. And the next is self-talk, because our talk betrays our thoughts. Our talk betrays our thoughts. The way we think, the way we talk is particularly about ourselves, about the world, and about that betrays the way we think. It's almost it's almost like clockwork. It always happens all the time. And then, like I said, sometimes writing those some self-limiting beliefs down actually denies them of their power, because when we write them down, suddenly they become really very irrational. They've always been occupying, they've been living rent-free in our heads, and they've never been unchallenged. But the very moment we write them down, you begin to see that, how can I believe this? I mean, how could I believe that my career was over without even starting, just because I didn't get my first interview? Thinking back 30 years on, it looks very irrational. But at the time, because there was so much emotion going on. And how many times do we allow those self-limiting beliefs to hold us back without really realizing that they are untrue? So challenging them. And one of the things I said, one of the things, when this was advertised, we said we're going to look at both scripture. For those who are inclined, if you want to scripture of that, 2 Corinthians 10:3-5 would be a good one to look at. In terms, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, they are mighty through God to the pulling down strongholds, casting down imaginations, and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. The reality is that the more neuroscience I now know that actually, do you know that neuroscience tells us that the connections in our brains, the neural network in our brains, the stronger they are, the more effective they are to be able to carry the message. The more deeply entrenched that message is, the more deeply entrenched that pattern of behavior or work or thinking or talking is. That looks to me like strongholds. Let me show you a picture. And okay, good. Can you see that? Can you see what that looks like? That looks like a strong network of webs. And when one thinks about 2 Corinthians 10:3-5, maybe there's a correlation. Just maybe there might be a correlation there. And then the other one is, apart from challenging them, and the way to challenge them is to bring the truth against them, to really expose them to reality. What's the evidence? And sometimes there was a time when I used to collect evidence against some of the things, the negative beliefs I had about myself. I needed to collect evidence to show that, look, this is not true. And one of the this is another coach. I also once had another coach who told me, she said, Ayodele, she said, as you rise in your career, as you rise in life, as you rise in leadership, it's going to become it's going to become an assumption that you must always perform 120% all of the time. She said, but the reality is that doesn't happen. Human beings don't perform 120%, 150% all of the time. And she said, the world is usually not very accommodating when that doesn't happen. And what you need to do to remind yourself that you are good enough is that when things go right, make sure you record. I use a folder, a paper folder, where I record, where I keep thank you cards, where I keep all the good things and nice things that people say about me, because I know that someday somebody is going to say something very unkind about me, and I will need to go back and remind myself how good I really am. She said, now that we've moved electronically, I still keep an electronic file where I put away, no matter it's a simple email, it's a cue card, whatever it is, I file it away, because I know there's going to be a day for it. On the day I receive it, it's all hunky-dory, but there's going to be a day when I need to remind myself, because there's something contrary that I'm going to have to remind myself that this is the way I am. And I'm going to challenge doing that. I collect. It's not to massage my ego. It's really because I will need to go back to them at some point to remind myself on the days when sometimes it just feels when it feels like it's all it's all the negative onslaught being thrown at you. You can go back and actually remind yourself that this cannot be lies. These are independent opinions from other people about me. So I cannot be the trash that the negative thinking patterns in my mind are telling me now. So it's good to habitually collect those evidences, and also to call out when we then find out the self-negative, self-limiting beliefs. Call them out, because when we call out those beliefs, they actually lose their power. They lose their hold. Um, that's really what it is. When we call them out, it loses the grip over us, and we need to then consciously create new thinking patterns. We need to create new thinking patterns, and just like I said that we are going to start scriptures. We can go to scriptures and find what really aligns with our faith, what really talks about who we really are. And I've actually written something out. I've done quite a long list of, it's called Equipped. It's about who we really are. If you struggle with who you really are, if you struggle with self-esteem, poor self-confidence, those were scriptures that now that those are things that I used to really think on and consciously fill my mind with years ago. And that's why I say I am convinced that it works. And if there's anyone who is interested in having them, I'll be very happy to share them. Sometimes when I speak publicly, I show them on the screen, because left to me, I would like everyone to have them, because I know how that was transformational for me, and I would like particularly people who struggle with self-esteem, who struggle with poor self-confidence, who think that they are no good, there's nothing special about them. The reality is that I now know enough to know that everything special about all the 8 billion of us on earth. No matter, I always say that I'm an identical twin, but the fact that I am strikingly identical to my twin. And now, well, near our 60s and our 50s, we are still very identical. But the reality is that we are still unique people as well. So just to put that out there. And if anyone is interested in that, you could either send one of the co-hosts or send myself where you would like it sent to, either an email address or number, and we'll get that to you. If it's a number you give us, we'll send it to you. Please do it send it by personal message, so everybody doesn't have your email or your phone number. So send them a co-host, and we'll make sure that we get that to you. And it's also about really moving into steps in self-limiting beliefs. We can move from I don't add value to actually I add value most of the time. So it may be that not all the time. I mean, sometimes it's not all the time. I mean, sometimes there's just nothing to add to what's good, and and we can live with that. But the fact that I don't add value, that cannot be true. Limiting belief. Right. Okay. So toxic thinking patterns, I'm going to round up in about 5 minutes now. We need to be intentional in dealing with them. We're already receiving strategies. Consistency is required. Like I said, it's about changing patterns, neural patterns in our brains, connections in our brains. Our cells are connected. It's about changing the connections and the making new connections. It requires time wiring. We've just said that 18 to 254 days, depending on the complexity, depending on the support and the effort you are getting. So it takes time, and it takes prioritizing. When we really know that our life depends on it, then we have a different attitude. Because indeed, and that's true, and that's also scriptures. Guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Or above all that you guard, protect your thinking, or protect your mind or your thinking, because your life flows from your thought. It cannot be more direct than that. So what's the 7R detox pattern that I talked about? The first one is recognition. And we've been talking about how to recognize toxic thinking patterns. We've talked about journaling. We've talked about holding you accountable, spousal relationships, children. Like in my house, anybody can call anybody to order. If you say something that's very negative, anybody, the youngest person in the house can say, "Daddy, is that really what you want, or is that what you want? Is that what you want to happen?" So we are each other's keeper in that regard. Anybody can respectfully call any other person to order and say, "That thinking pattern doesn't align with what you want here," and you to retrieve. So recognition, and that there's also a scripture supporting that in really let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable unto you, O Lord. Rationalization is really about challenging those thoughts to the light of what's true. Is it really true? Whatever things are true, whatever things are honest, whatever things are good, of good report, whatever things are and just, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. So does that thought that you hold about yourself, others, and the world, does it align with what's true, what's honest, what's just, or does it align even with core evidence? If you want to go with scriptures, that's scriptures. If you want to go with science, does it align with core evidence? Is there any core evidence? Somebody's achieved a PhD and they are still saying they don't have any value, and these things, they still believe that there's nothing good about them. The last time I checked, I know you can buy PhD in America, but even with that, I mean, you must have done something worthy of your name. No university will give out a PhD to somebody that doesn't really done anything. It doesn't work like that. There must be something that you've done to merit it, even if it even no matter how. And it's just rationalization really challenging rejection. Let's not allow rogue thoughts, self-limiting beliefs, dysfunctional thinking to live rent-free in our minds, in our brains, not paying any rent and running havoc. Can you imagine double jeopardy? It's not paying rent, and it's also harassing the people who are the landowners. So replacement is, there's no vacuum in thinking. It's either those thoughts, those rogue thoughts need to be replaced with something else, and that brings me to, that's why I cited the scriptures that I wrote out, that I think that's really one that I used. Reimaging is really about, there's now a lot of science supporting visualization as well, that the image that you think about yourself will to actually affect the way your life plays out. That's also scriptural, about 1-3, for those who are such inclined. It's rejoicing is about, you cannot hold joy and negative emotions together, in terms of, even if you start doing something joyful, over time, your body and your mind catches up. And the other one, the very important part, is repeating process. It takes a while for things to change, but keep at it. We know we are rewiring circuits in the brain. So recognition, I talked about that, really checking in with yourself, understanding that your mood, your thought leads to mood, emotions, and emotions lead to behavior, and then the cycle repeats itself. And the source of the thought mostly is usually about something that has happened in the past. Accountability, we've talked about some accountability systems. I'm getting help, getting a coach, speaking to a therapist, speaking to a counselor. It's not counterfeit. It's not counterfeit to engage with a coach, to engage with a counselor, to engage with a therapist. It is not. And there are some apps around now. Neurocycle app is one of them. There's also the How We Feel app. How We Feel app. How We Feel. It's a collaboration between the director of Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence and Pinterest. They both collaborated, and they brought out this app, really about how to monitor moods. Professor Mark Brackett, that's the founding director of Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and the other person, the Pinterest guy, I forget his name, but those are two. Neurocycle app is an app by Dr. Caroline Leaf, who is doing quite a lot of work in terms of mind mood management, and who is very clear about her Christian faith. She doesn't hide it. The other person that you might want to check out their work is Professor Daniel Amen, as in Amen to prayers. Daniel Amen, the popular, famous Amen Clinic in Florida, I think. Right. So, and the other thing is give yourself grace, give yourself allowance. It takes time to change. So extend grace to yourself like you extend grace to every other person. Rationalization, I think we've talked about that. So you can take a photo of this if you wanted to. Those are some of the questions you can ask, apart from the scripture that I quoted. These are really, if you wanted to go the way of science, these are questions you could ask. What negative past experiences of trauma may be clouding my judgment currently? Like when I believed that my career was over without having started. What's the worst case scenario? And so what? I mean, sometimes when we call the bluff of those thoughts and say, and so what? Actually, reality sinks in that is London Bridge hasn't fallen down. London is not on fire. What would my rational objective friends say if I hacked them, if I told them what I was thinking? So rejection, really, it's sometimes I speak out loud when it's convenient, when it's suitable, not when people are going to think there's something else wrong with me. So obviously when it's safe to, maybe when I'm alone or something. Sometimes it's also about rejecting those thoughts is about treating them like a leaf on a pond. You know, when you go to a stream, when you observe a stream, for those who go to the countryside, sometimes you see leaves on a stream, and you can see the leaves just floating by. Sometimes it's just nice to be curious and just say, that's an interesting thought. I'm not embracing it, I'm not engaging with it, I'm not taking it on board. I'm just letting it go. I'm not going to, it's not mine, and I'm not personalizing it. Sometimes writing them down, like I said. So this is summary slide, and this is, I think, the last slide before we start doing the adverts. So notice your thoughts. You don't have to believe them, except to rationalize them. Don't believe. So I'm hoping that some of us are beginning to question some of the thinking that has run our life for a while. Act on your values, not your mood. Name your emotions. When you name them, they lose their power. It's like it loses the grip. You don't need motivation. You create motivation by your action. People say, oh yeah, I'm not motivated today. Sometimes it's the action it's when you start the action that the motion gets going. And in all of this, it's helpful to know ourselves. I've done quite a lot on that in terms of breathing techniques, in terms of muscular exercises, in terms of relaxation exercises, in terms of grounding techniques. All of those. I'm sure there's one of the videos on the YouTube channel that talks about that. The story you tell yourself is your reality. So when anything happens, it's a story that we tell ourselves that actually determines the outcome. If we say, oh, this is the end of the person, most likely it will be. If we say, this is my stepping stone to greater heights, it will be. Neuroscience now tells us, we now know enough to know that it's not just psychobabble, it's not just scriptural, it's not just spirituality, that it actually is effective, it works. Acceptance isn't giving up, it's moving forward. Sometimes knowing that this is what is happening now, but I'm not accepting it. I'm happening now. This is not my reality. I'm going to continually change until I get to where I'm going. So those are some of the books. Which on Your Brain, Caroline Leaf, Winning the Battle of the Mind, Joyce Myers. A very good one, particularly for people who have experienced trauma and who feel that that's why am I like this? Kobe Campbell. I think I've got it somewhere on my shelf here, but it's somewhere in my shelf somewhere. But one of the most practical books I've read on dealing with trauma and how to come out of trauma, because how to heal from trauma, recover from trauma, and how to not allow past trauma to hold you back, because trauma explains some of the toxic thinking patterns that most people have. And Kobe Campbell wrote from my own experience first as a victim of multiple abuses, including sexual abuse, and then training to become a counselor herself, and she now has practice. So the stories we tell ourselves, another psychotherapist called Gonto, who practices in Plano in Texas. And that's the app I talked about, How We Feel by Mark Brackett and Pinterest, Pinterest CEO. And there's another app, Christian meditation app, www.soultime.com. There's www.ll.com, livinglifetothefull.com. That's the self-help CBT website. It's free, and you can actually go through modules about challenging your dysfunctional thinking patterns. 16personalities.com. People know that there's hardly any session that I don't talk about that. And it's about really knowing how you're inclined and wired, and understanding understanding your personality and making it work for you, and not feeling that you've been changed because you're an introvert. Because that used to be my thinking. I used to I was the one who ended up an introvert. Now I like being an introvert. That's the way I'm wired, and I'm happy with it. And I'm able to use it to the best of my ability, and it works for me. So those are the things that Tripart Care offer. Keynote, public speaking. We deliver training, corporate training to faith organizations as well as corporate organizations. Workplace mental health and well-being consultancy. And those are a suite of courses that we do deliver. And this is what's on the horizon for 2026. I'm glad, extremely excited to announce that we now have a date for the leadership, mental health leadership training for people who are leaders, either in the corporate or in the church settings. And I'm going to show that slide next. I'm really excited because 2025, summer in my diary was too packed to accommodate it. So it was one of the first things that landed on the diary this year. And so I'm really looking forward to it. It's on the 14th of February. And so really looking forward to that. And there's still another one that's been pending. We've been carrying it over from 2025, but it will happen. It's an emotional intelligence course. I know we've been talking about it now for at least a year for engaged and newly married couples, but it will happen. It will happen. And there's also, that was from last year, actually, or 2 years ago, the Tripart Mind Gym course, which is also on the horizon. So we're going to be looking at emotional intelligence in leadership, particularly for people who are Christian leaders, who lead charities, who lead in the corporate world. Really, what are the things that I'm bringing into my leadership that may be affecting my effectiveness as a leader, and what can I do about it? So people can take photos of that. It's going to be on this same platform. It's going to be the same login details as this. And 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. So for people who are in that, it's going to be 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. for you. And you can just work out your time zone accordingly. So those are the things on the horizon for next 2 months. I'm looking forward to the substance misuse one. I wouldn't be doing that. Somebody else will be doing it. An addiction specialist will be doing that. We're going to be talking about toxic relationships next month. Since February is the romantic month, we are going to talk about a lot of, I've been receiving questions quite a lot on narcissistic personality and narcissism and manipulative relationships and all of that. So that's something that is going to be on the cards. That's the Tripart Care Instagram page. And we've got a WhatsApp channel, as it was said in the introduction. So if you take a photo of that, it will lead you on there, and then we can accept you to the group. Also, we are being more cautious about how we manage that group now because we've had some scares in the past. And this is really the WhatsApp group for people who are in leadership, ministry, corporate world, charities. If you feel that you have a responsibility leaders for each other. This is a group where leadership in terms of mental health is discussed. And that's a book club ably led by Dr. Dorcas Awolaran. Dr. Dorcas is one of the team members as well, and she's doing a good job leading the book club. The current book that is being read is Bessel van der Kolk's book. How can I forget? The Body Keeps the Score. The Body Keeps the Score. Really brilliant book, and really very practical about overcoming trauma. And those are the contact details. So Tripart Care, that's basically the places where we hang out. And thank you for listening. Oh, yes, I did say I was going to show the video. So let me go back to it and see.
Our thoughts, feelings, and behaviours continually affect each other, and it's easy to develop negative patterns where unhelpful thoughts lead to unhelpful feelings and actions. Sometimes this can become a vicious cycle. Many of us don't realise that we can influence this process and that this is mental health. The best way to deal with these unhelpful thoughts is to recognise them, challenge them, and see if you can replace them. Some people call this the catch it, check it, change it approach. With practice, this can help us look at perceived problems from a different perspective. For example, you might be worried about an important task you have to do at work, convinced it will go wrong and everyone will think you're a failure. Rather than immediately accepting this thought and feeling even worse, take a moment to catch it and check it. Ask yourself whether there's good evidence for it or if there are other explanations. Try thinking about what you would say to a friend who was thinking this way. Finally, see if you can change the thought for a more positive one. Maybe, I'm prepared, I've put a lot of work in, and I'm going to do my best. Sometimes you will be able to change the thought to a positive one, but don't worry when at other times you can't. There are no right or wrong answers. It's about learning to think more flexibly, be more in control. By catching the thought, checking it, and seeing if you can change it, with practice, you can help break the negative cycle.
Stop sharing that. Good. All right. I wonder whether there are any thoughts. So any questions, any comments in the room? I'm just going to start looking at the comments now. Okay, yeah. Thank you for your feedback. So if you have any questions, please just type in the chat, and I'm sure that my colleagues will